tanks to store water to
The
so that we can, fill them up in low water months to meet, because it looks like right now we're starting to maybe exceed the 12 million or.
If you look at it, and it comes back to your question about what the long-term supply plan is, the long-range supply plan looks at source. Where are you going to get the raw water? And the operative word there is raw water. Your plant takes that water and turns it to finished water, drinking water, which is actually almost like a food product. It has a shelf life, and so storing large amounts of the finished water is really not a good idea. It's like going out and buying 1,000 gallons of milk and putting it in your refrigerator. It's going to go bad. You just buy as much as you need. So you got to try and imagine it that way. So, but I would take your idea and talk about aquifer storage and recovery, where you take the finished water and you put it in the ground, and that water can stay in the ground for quite some time, years, and then withdraw it later. So the idea of storing that water makes a lot of sense, but you'll be storing it under the ground in large quantities, millions, hundreds of millions of gallons in some cases. But again, for the Roseburg area, that's not a proven concept, and that's why we pushed that out 10 years. As you get down the road, you might say, geez, we need to think about that now. Now let's start exploring it. That's why we put that $60,000 number out in the future.
Yeah, I was wondering if our geology would even support something.
Exactly. You don't know. You don't know.
Are we capitalized for, in terms of water rates and things? I know that's obviously why we do some of this. But, our water rates have always been billed around the principle of being able to pay for these plant expansions about the time that they're needed, so we're not caught from behind like many cities are and having to get grants and loans and doubling and tripling water rates all of a sudden.
We are building some reserves. That's another lively discussion among the Public Works Commission, is if the existing customers should completely support the plant expansion. There will be some benefit to the existing customers in increased efficiencies and some other matters. But the general sentiment thus far is that when we get closer to that point, that we need to look at adjusting our SDC rates so that it is a split cost among existing customers and future customers. The way our SDC is set up right now, it's completely a reimbursement. There is no improvement part of the SDC, so as we get closer to needing plant expansion, that is one thing that should be considered, is reworking that methodology and improvement section to pay for future expansion of the plant.
What the water you're talking about, trying to acquire senior water rights on North Umpqua River? Can you explain just briefly how you envision that happening?
Yes, it's easy to talk about doing it. It's a much more complicated thing to do, and the reason is water rights are typically tied. If they're like for farming or irrigation or something, tied to the land. And so you can go and find somebody with a water right that's senior somewhere up in the basin. That's likely going to be a farmer irrigating land. And so you could approach that person to buy the water right, but their land has value that's tied to that right. So the land without the water isn't as valuable as the land with the water. So you're probably going to end up, in order to acquire that right, to acquire the property and then the right with it. Then use that right, transfer it down, get it transferred through administrative procedures to the plant. In other words, strip it off the land. Then you have the land. So what do you do with the land? You sell it probably, or make it a park. But it's a complicated process because you have to deal with private parties, find a willing seller, agree on a price, be darn sure that the state will allow you to move that right downstream and to convert its use from irrigation to municipal. So it's not it's a complicated process, and ultimately we didn't put a number on it because there's no way we'd ever know.
Have you seen it done in a large scale anywhere in Oregon? I mean, I can see little pieces, but I can't envision
Yeah.
North Umpqua on a large scale unless I'm missing some out there.
I've not seen it done in Oregon on a large scale. It's done a lot in California, Nevada, and so forth, where it's pretty common. But I will say this, you don't need a lot. You know, you need a 3 or 4 CFS, and you will have gotten to 22 million gallons a day. So it's something worth pursuing, in my opinion. The idea is to, as Chris mentioned, maximize the use of your Winchester facilities up to that 22 million gallons a day. That is your cheapest alternative, because when you go to build that South Umpqua plant, you know, that's $30 million. That's just a horrendous cost. So the whole point of our plan was to maximize the use of that plant.
Now you brought up the idea of the South Umpqua idea, and it, I'll probably mispronounce this, but the cryptosporidium, and it sounds like we're doing okay with that. Our raw water doesn't tend to have that isn't a problem for us, at least at this point.
No.
And is that because of the purity of the North Umpqua water?
Yes.
Okay, so we may not be as fortunate if we got South Umpqua.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not seen any cryptosporidium testing results on the South Umpqua, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were.
I don't know. Well, come here in late August,
Right.
downtown Roseburg, and
Yeah.
wade across the river, and you might
Yeah.
change your mind. But
Exactly.
is that the problem is that the problem they're having up in Portland, that the EPA is requiring huge expenditures of money to treat their water for that?
Yes.
Okay. And it sounds to me like it's a boatload of money that they have to spend that they didn't expect to have to spend.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, okay. So the quality of the water in the North Umpqua, that's critical.
Yes.
And if that changes, we're in big trouble also.
Well, you've got some room. You've got some room to move. Your treatment plant will handle crypto much higher than you have it now, but not. You know, it can get to a point where your plant will not handle it. So.
Right. Okay. Thanks.